You're listening to the REITE Club podcast, where the focus is all about helping you grow your real estate investment portfolio and live the life you want to live. Come grow with us and join our community at thereiteclub.com. And now your hosts, Sarah Larby and Alfonso Salemi.
So surrounding yourself with people at a higher level that can help, propel you to that next step, and then taking action on those conversations and the advice and the insights. What keeps you up at night? Like you've grown really, really quickly. You take, for many people, they might think very big risks or big steps, or you scaled up also very quickly. 350 plus doors within the last 3 to 4 years, which is incredible. Do you lose any sleep, and if so, over what?
I don't think I really would say I lose any sleep. If you ask my girlfriend, as soon as I lay in bed and my head hits the pillow, I'm sleeping. So I don't know if I'd say I lose any sleep. However, I would say I get up early and I pour into myself. So I've run a schedule for a few years now where 4 a.m. till 7 a.m. I pour into myself. And I will say that recently it hasn't been as good as that was in the past. Like I had about a year where I didn't miss a 4 a.m. and it was just every single morning at 4 a.m. And so from 4 until 7, I pour into myself. And that means journaling, reading, writing, scripting, going to the gym, whatever the scenario may be. Like I'm pouring into myself. Even meditation, it's so powerful. Even if it's a minute, it can be a minute, it can be an hour, just to allow your mind to run free, or visualization and see where you want to go. And so I spend the morning of myself, that first 3 hours from 4 to 7. And then from 7 to 9 is where in the past, it used to be a lot of my coaching calls where I was being coached. So I have a number of coaches and mentors. So every morning I would have a coach or mentor or two, where we'd have a 30 to 60 minute conversation, and I'd ask questions and learn different things. And I have different mentors and different coaches in every area of my life, whether it be my real estate investing career, my real estate as an agent career, spiritually, whatever the area may be. I've had someone that I can learn from, and I do that normally from 7 to 9 when I'm the sharpest, when I'm the most ready to kind of learn and absorb. And then from 9 o'clock in the morning until 9 o'clock in the evening is when I pour into others. And that's really the schedule that I've worked on for a couple of years now. And so I think that the other piece to mention on that is that there's 6 main human needs, and there's 4 that everyone needs and does and desires. And there's 2 that you kind of grow into. And this was at a Tony Robbins event in November of 2018 that I heard about this. It's the need for certainty, the need for uncertainty, the need for love and relationship, and the need for significance are the 4 main needs that every human has and they're born with. And then the 2 that you grow into are growth and contribution. And so it's constantly being like in an environment to growing and pushing and living in a world of chaos, really, because growth is not comfortable most of the time. You're normally dealing with headaches or problems, and problems become bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's what growth really is. And then it allows to open doors that you never really thought possible. And then contribution is where you're giving back. And this can be done through charity, this can be done through donations, this can be done through your time, whatever it may be. Contribution is really what I focus a lot of my time and energy on now, whether it be within the team, or it be within the brokerage, or it be within creating a better home for our renters and our tenants that may have lived through a rougher type of property before, and now we're fully renovating it and giving a premium unit that is affordable, livable, and really comfortable for someone.
So it's you're right. Growth is never easy. It is chaotic, but I really love like what you said about just you go for it and you grow, and it can be painful at times. There's no question, but you're not going to change anything unless you're willing to grow, right? It's kind of like change and growth. Well, change can be negative, but if you put change and growth together, then wow, the world's at your feet, and you're surrounding yourself with really great people, and it sounds like you're working hard, but I think you're also having fun. Am I wrong about that?
I have a lot of fun. What's the point in living if you're not having fun? So, financially, I've reached a point at this point where I'm well off at the point where I can enjoy stuff. I could dial it back. I could kind of not work as long and as much, but I don't really consider it work anymore. Like everything I do, analyzing a building or listing a property and the negotiation, or kind of getting the highest value on a street, or like the most recent building that we're in the process of refinancing. Like I'll go through the numbers if you guys really want, but it's like that building in particular, I could do 24 hours a day on. Like, it's looking like if I could just spend all my life looking for more of those, it would be really exhilarating. And doing that for myself, doing that for clients. Stefan Arnio challenged me, unfortunately before he passed, to purchase a 100-unit apartment building. So anyone who's out there that has a 100-unit apartment building, please reach out. I am looking for one actively. I want to do a full turn on it, and I will absolutely get into a 100-unit building before too long. So, awesome. I mean, yeah.
Can we go through the building? I mean, we were talking a little bit about it before we started recording, and it seems like an absolute amazing deal. So if you could share with us what it is that you purchased, how you found it, how you're financing it, and just walk us through the whole process.
So I have 2 business partners on it, one of which is how we got it. So it's a 32-unit apartment building in St. Catharines. And when I was first exposed to the idea of it, was right after going to another education course with Pierre Paul. And it was my business partner, David Blanche, on that one. And he actually had a relationship with a property manager. And the property manager had known that they wanted to keep the management in the building, and they wanted to sell it to someone else who would keep them. So, it's a 32 units, 17 units were vacant at the time we were looking at it. The building hadn't really been touched in a while. It was really run down. There was units with cockroaches. There was units with bed bugs. It was dirty. It was exactly what you would think of on a building that's half vacant. And so we ended up picking it up for $3.4 million. There was really no justification. I think it's important to realize there was no justification to the price regarding a cap rate or how you're traditionally going to get to the value on a building, because so often I find that people are like, oh, well, that cap is the 3 cap and I won't buy it. And it's like, but it's half vacant. How can you possibly say it's a 3 cap if it's half vacant? So when you start looking at the actual tangibles of it, we started looking at what the upside could be, and we started looking at what our renovation budget would be. And we're like, okay, this would be kind of cool. So we started running through the numbers on it, and we had to target for about a $900,000 renovation. And we expected it to be somewhere around mid to high sixes would be the valuation when it was complete. And so we started going out looking for another partner. And so we were looking at different ways to try and finance. This was the first time I had purchased a building at all, never mind this size. So I didn't even have a 6-plex or an 8-plex or a 10-plex by then. It was all just houses. And so the traditional way of financing that I had gone about was doable with smaller houses, but it was tough to get $3.4 million in private money that I could just basically pay a higher interest rate on. So we ended up bringing in another partner, which was my cousin, and we ended up purchasing it. We ended up purchasing it in cash and doing the renovation in cash and bringing him in as a partner. And it was a debt and an equity deal that we ended up having to put together on that one. And it was his first property. So it was a challenge to come to a negotiation in terms on what this would look like. He has a number of different businesses that give good revenue, but this was his first exposure to real estate investing. So what kind of opportunity other than a 32-unit apartment building? And he had no idea what the upside was. So when we bought it for 3.4, we figured we'd put 900,000 into it. We'd be at 4.3, and then there'd be $500,000 to $700,000 worth of interest because we were paying a pretty high interest rate on the money we borrowed. So we were going to be around $5 million all in. That was the idea. And at the time, we're thinking, okay, we'll go with a conventional 70-75% loan to value, and we'll be able to pull out most, if not all, of our equity. This was pre-COVID. And so we made the deal. We got into it it was November of 2019 that we ended up closing on it and started getting running on it. Immediately we started getting the units that were vacated demoed. We started spraying the walls constantly. And then right through the winter, we actually had some pipes explode. And so we had a flood on the top floor, water damage on the top floor that came down, and I have photos of it still. There was like all the windows from the top floor all the way down to the bottom because I think it was April or March, it was still cold. And so all these windows had frozen and seals broken and right down. So the entire thing was being gutted. It was luckily on the side that we had already basically gutted, but there was a couple different pops. There was 2 different spots that it had popped and water was coming down. So we realized at that point in time that we have this building with a boiler system that has water running through all the walls. And it was 60 years old. And we're sitting there going, we need to consider replacing all this. So we started looking at what it would take to replace all this plumbing. And we decided to transfer from the boiler system to electric ductless split unit. So by doing that, the importance why I'm sharing this is that by doing that, we were actually able to add hydro to each of the units. So now in all these units only having heat, no air conditioning, and having air conditioning window units that were really ugly from the outside, Now we were able to remove all the plumbing, never have to worry about water flooding our place again, given the boiler system. We got to remove the boilers, which then it gave us more space. We got to get rid of gas completely, and we changed to an entire electrical system. So now the entire building is done electrically. And we have heat and air conditioning in each of the units controlled to the temperature they desire, how they want it. And we ended up replacing all the windows. So we weren't planning on replacing windows. We weren't planning on replacing the boiler. So now 154 windows later, ductless heat systems everywhere. We had to increase our utilities, or our hydro service, building a concrete box underground, had to buy a transformer because we couldn't get one from the local city because it was a pain to get a hold of Electra. So we had to literally go and purchase from the manufacturer this transformer we put underground in a concrete box. And then we had to rewire every single unit. So the entire building now has new windows. It has a new HVAC system in every single unit. You can heat and cool them. They were gutted down to the studs. Every single unit got gutted down to the studs. Our renovation cost ended up going, we're not even finished it yet, but we'll be somewhere in between 1.5 and 2 million on our total renovation cost. So we're sitting there going, okay, we bought it for 3.4. We have 500 to 700,000 in interest. We have $1.5 million in renovation budget, and we budgeted $6.5 million. We might be in trouble. So I started looking at this and I was like, okay, how could this make sense? So before we did all the heat and air conditioning, we ran our NOI numbers again. We started running the numbers as you do on a building. We started realizing that by taking the hydro that we were currently paying out of the deal and charging our tenants for hydro, additionally, by having air conditioning in the units, these units were now worth an extra $100 to $150 a month. And when you apply a cap, which in St. Catharines, the average was 4.6, so I was being conservative and using a 5 cap, we realized that our valuation actually comes in somewhere north of 8 million. And so we started running through this whole process before making any decisions and weighing out our odds and looking to replace the boiler or not, realizing that this building now had so much upside that it was going to be the nicest units in St. Catharines. Like, we're no longer comparing it to other apartment buildings. We're now comparing it to brand new condos. So when looking at direct comparison approach and you start looking at what properties may look like, because the entire building is brand new, there is a 1% maintenance and repair. We can actually justify that because there's nothing else to do. We painted the outside, we painted the inside. We're doing new driveway, new living space. We have a brand new spray foam roof, which if you haven't looked into for a building, I would highly recommend it. It was 40 some odd thousand instead of 250,000. So that saved us 200 grand. And we really just experienced this whole process. Who do I know that had done this before? Nobody. So I was getting back to that proximity as power conversation. All I was doing was being in conversations. And again, it comes back to what keeps you up at night. Well, it doesn't really keep me up at night. Just makes me think of who can I talk to that I would be in conversation that would allow me to understand the pros and cons of a spray foam roof, or of ductless splits in the units, or heat and AC versus just heat in these units, and painting the outside of the building, making it look aesthetically pleasing, doing a driveway, all these different things, having conversations with people who'd already done it. And so this building, at the end of the day, we also found out that because of what we're doing, we can actually do CMHC financing. So we're refinancing it through CMHC. So the intention is that we're going to have a building between $8 and $10 million that we are going to go back and get 85% loan to value. And since we have a private mortgage on it, and the private will be bought out by a CMHC approved lender. So we have the whole process figured out. And this was something that every single day when it came to the financing, it came to the appraisal, I had to relearn. I had to learn new areas and new aspects, and we're always missing pieces. I mean, the environmental is going to take us 2 months to get. The appraisals right now are 6-week turnaround. So we're looking at the timeline where all this stuff is at, and there's always hiccups. There's always bumps in the road. But when you have the vision, and it really comes back to that morning routine where I spend a few hours thinking. I spend a few hours just visualizing, like, what could this look like? Who do I have to talk to? So often, it's going to sound weird, but so often in the shower, I was thinking about it yesterday, I'm wishing that I had a whiteboard in my shower, that I could just write down notes, because I always just think of things in there, and I remind myself, and so I keep my phone outside, and I'll email myself the different things that I'm thinking, like notes, how I need to follow up, who I need to talk to, who I need to follow up with, what meetings I have to call, different ideas. Okay, what about this? What about this? For some reason, it's in the mornings that I always think of these different ideas and these concepts. And so it's really been an awesome experience to go through the building and do the building project. And since I've had that now, I guess we're coming up on 12 months that I've had the building, I've since sold 10 or 12 buildings to other investors, one of which was my parents. And when I run the numbers on that building, everyone that I tell about it after it actually closed is like, well, why didn't you bring that one to me? And I'm like, I did bring it to you. You just didn't pull the trigger on it. You didn't want to go into multiples. You didn't want to do this. You didn't want to do that. And that was an MLS sixplex. My parents are making $3,200 a month without touching it. And it's like they net $3,200 a month on a sixplex that they're putting $160,000 into. So
that's awesome.
Understanding the start and then understanding it and then going and doing all kinds of it just excites me.
Thanks for listening to the REITE Club podcast and joining our community of real estate investors online at thereiteclub.com, where the focus is about helping you grow. We look forward to seeing you again next week. Thanks from your hosts, Sarah Larby and Alfonso Salemi.